In our culture, people talk a lot about self-love, but unfortunately, the people that talk about self-love that we see are usually extremely attractive and charismatic celebrities. I remember a few years ago, I would constantly see plus-size models talking about self-love and their journey to accepting themselves. And I can understand that they probably did have some kind of struggle in that regard. But objectively, plus size or not, they were so stunning that everywhere they went for probably their entire life, people were complimenting them, people were staring at them. The woman that I'm thinking of got approached in a mall when she was 15 and offered a modeling contract from which she's made millions of dollars. So whether or not she struggled, objectively, she was getting signals of love and regard from the world from the time that she was very young. Most people don't have that. And there's actually a large section of people that really struggle socially and are, objectively speaking, not physically attractive to the point that people don't approach them, people might be frightened of them, people get a bad impression of them even though they don't deserve it, and no one ever talks about that because, generally, unattractive people are ignored. Not really bullied, at least in adult life, but totally ignored. Well, today, I want to talk to those people because it's very hard to think about how we can have self-regard and self-love if we are, at this moment at least, objectively unattractive, unsuccessful, in the eyes of the world, just not someone that's highly valued. And the answer is, I'm not going to beat around the bush, is you have to create deliberately your own system of values and stick to it. And I mean this in specific terms, and I'll give a specific example. A while back, I was living in a very isolated location, which meant that I could not really date at all. But prior to that, I had gotten a lot of validation through dating and meeting women. But with that stripped and gone, and the few opportunities that I did happen to have, me just kind of fumbling them, I just had no sense of success, no sense of self. I'm like, why would I self-love myself? I'm failing. Why would I have confidence around women? I'm failing with them. I'm doing terribly. What helped me was to finally come to terms with the fact that being good with the opposite gender is not the end-all, be-all of your value. And you can say that. A lot of people will say that, but they don't feel it. Like, at the end of the day, they feel lonely, they feel horrible about themselves. But what helped me is reading the writing of someone who had, been a virgin until they were 28, had failed completely, had been the absolute extreme example of a quote-unquote loser, and they are not physically attractive. And yet, they're one of the most brilliant writers I've ever read. And that led me to thinking more about people like Nikola Tesla, Isaac Newton, these guys that died virgins. These guys who we regard as the absolute upper echelon of humanity, but who in their time were rejected by all women, who no one wanted anything to deal with. Another example was Nietzsche, one of the most brilliant men who ever lived. The woman he fell in love with completely rejected him, didn't find him interesting. All of his intelligence, his massive intelligence, which he communicated to her through letters, she wasn't interested in. And she probably, was happy with regular guys who weren't anywhere near Nietzsche, who will never be remembered. Nothing. And so realizing that, women are awesome and all that, but it's not like women have some, magical power to judge and define my value. They're just people working on attraction, and maybe they didn't happen to be attracted to me. Maybe my body language was bad. There are a whole number of factors that I might have made mistakes and that maybe I should work on. But it doesn't mean that I'm worthless. Because clearly, if Isaac Newton died a virgin, being good with women is not the end-all, be-all of your value as a human being. And you need to go through everything that you're bad at, everything that you suck at, everything that the world rejects you for, and consider carefully how much it really matters and should matter to you. But the real trouble is that most people, if they have difficulties with this, if they have low self-esteem, if they're unattractive, if they're not charismatic, if they have no self-love, if they don't have anything else going either, then they're really going to be totally lost. They're going to become shut-ins. They're going to become, they're going to want to self-harm because they have no value. The outside world is not giving them anything, and their interior world is also not giving them anything. They have no spiritual connection to the greater universe. They have no great project like an Isaac Newton or a Nikola Tesla to buoy them up, to give them a intrinsic sense of value in themselves. And so they're lost. What you should not do is trick yourself and listen to the people who are telling you, no, you're good looking. I see this all the time online where people that sadly are not physically attractive go to the internet and just are begging, please be honest with me. Tell me how I look. Tell me how I can move forward with my life. And the comment section is just lying to them because no one wants to take on the responsibility of being honest. So the comment section is like, nah, you're not that bad. You're kind of cute. Gaslighting that person and leaving them still trapped in this feeling of like, I know deep down I'm not attractive. I've never been told I was attractive my whole life. I just want to come to terms with that. And now people on the internet aren't letting me. I'm telling you now, I don't know what you look like, obviously. But whatever you look like, whoever you are, you need to develop another sense in which you can judge yourself. Because for most of us that aren't the top like 5% in any regarded field are not going to be getting tons of like compliments anyway. Like even pretty attractive people are not constantly bombarded with positive feedback, which means that you need to have other ways of valuing yourself. Now, I've just talked about the dark side of this issue. The light side is that it's stunning how much dignity and grace and value a person can have, however ugly or uncharismatic or challenged in other ways that they might be. I can think of countless historical examples of people, say Socrates, who were widely known for their unattractiveness, and yet they embodied traits and values that were so far advanced of their time, or were so at least intrinsic, or were so grounded, or were so valuable in some other way that everyone loves them. And I'll give a kind of taboo example, but a lot of people say with special needs who in objective ways are very, very like much not what society accepts and values. And yet these people are sometimes a huge boon to the life of the people around them because they embody other things like extreme sweetness, altruism, kindness, innocence, naivety. There are so many ways that you can be valuable to other people without being extremely attractive or extremely materially successful. The trouble is, if you're embittered and angry and you have no sense of yourself and you have no system of values in which you can embody, you have nothing. You have literally nothing. And there are so many guys especially that I see that are like this. They have no way of valuing themselves. They have no single lane in which they're succeeding. What they have is the world's rejection of them, and then a series of simulations like video games and porn that they cling to in which they can role play as someone that is attractive and successful. They haven't accepted themselves at all. They haven't looked in the mirror and said, for some reason, God, the universe, put me in this vessel, which might, have a few warts, might not look so hot. But for some reason, I'm in this vessel, and I'm sure that I have a few gifts I could use. But if you don't audit those gifts, and if you don't audit history and other people and say, man, I might not be that cool, I might not be that good looking, but these gifts mean something. If I could be a great architect, if I could be a great inventor, if I could be the nicest, most generous person in my community, then I could be worth so much more than that random attractive person in the club who I felt jealous of when I was younger. There's so much that everyone could do. But so long as they're trapped in valuing themselves in the way that society values good looks, attractiveness, success, then they'll just be depressed. They'll just see themselves at the bottom of the totem pole. And if you feel that you're at the bottom of the totem pole, it's very hard to advance because you feel like you're just being pressed down on by the boot of society. So in your mind, you need to be at the top of the totem pole in some regard. This often rears its head with like high school kids. Like if a high school kid is quote unquote nerdy, not attractive, etc., he'll become kind of a snob because to survive psychologically, he needs to think that being good at math is the coolest thing ever. Being good at chess is the coolest thing ever. And in a way, without being an angry nerd and snob, you need to do the same thing. If you're not attractive, but you're good at chess, you need to understand the value of being good at chess. That is where your self-esteem is going to come from. Now, there's other layers to this of how your self-esteem can come from simply being a human being. But that's for another video because it's starting to rain. That's all.